So again, I just want to understand. I just want to understand your position. I'm not even going to attack. I just want to understand it. So if I tell you definitively, like I am going to find a 9-year-old because in my culture it's what we do. It's totally normal. I'll even invite you to the wedding. I'm going to find this 9-year-old and I will impregnate her. You're telling me it's illegal? Okay, so arrest me. I'm going to do it anyway. You're saying that you would still hang on. You're saying that just based on what I tell you alone, that would not be grounds for rejecting my application. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is what I'm saying.
Okay.
So Jubilee is a YouTube channel on the internet.com that I have a love-hate relationship with. In that, I completely hate them. They copyright claim me all the time, even though all my usage of their video clips is 100% fair use. But we're gonna set aside the fact that if Jubilee were a kid in elementary school with me, I would bully the crap out of them until their parents came in and pulled them out of school, and focus on the clip that you just saw right there. Because what you just witnessed was a woman, possibly a non-straight left-wing woman, deciding that the issue of marrying children is actually not that big of a concern when you think about it, especially when you're crafting immigration policy. So even though she was given a slam dunk hypothetical on whether or not she, as an immigration officer, would let somebody in the nation if they said that they were going to impregnate a 9-year-old girl once they were within this nation, she's like, that's a cultural difference. That's nothing to worry about. I'm not going to do anything about that because even though I personally disagree with it, me personally know like the child marriage, that doesn't necessarily mean that my personal opinion should have any impact at all whatsoever on our laws. And honestly, genuinely, I really do appreciate this episode of Jubilee's Roundtable, which will be linked in full in the description of this video, because it just goes to show you that these people cannot get power again. They're insane in every possible way. And of course, unsurprisingly, when the topic becomes non-Muslims and the issue is exactly the same issue, this woman changes up her position. Because again, you can never have any standards at all whatsoever when it comes to Islam. Standards are for white people, standards are for Catholics and Christians and Jews, but definitely 100% not Muslims. So yeah, we just gotta accept a little bit of child marriage because that enriches us. It enriches us as a civilization. So this is what we're gonna talk about today. But before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay?
Migration is the root of life. The product of any culture is migration, is the movement, is the transferring of language, of food, of customs and cultures. How we build and grow as a global world is rested on migration, is rested on the ability of people to move freely. And so to say that uncontrolled migration will ruin American culture, I think is just against our natural understandings of what it means to be a human, which is to freely move and to share with each other.
So I decided to play this portion of the clip right here because this is like the opening statement from this individual who is going to embarrass herself or theyself in every possible way throughout the course of this topic. And as usual, what we hear is the open borders message. Migration is just the human experience. Migration is a constant. Migration is good. And we really shouldn't have open borders at all whatsoever because in reality and actuality, all cultures are equal. No culture is better than any other culture. And of course, that excludes Western culture or white people's cultures because those are inferior and thus must be destroyed. This is the perspective that you get from one of these lefties. And again, this is the prelude, the setup, what ended up triggering this Jewish man right here, this Jewish boy, if you will, to ask her the question of all questions that again, should have been a slam dunk easy answer.
Like macrocosm, like speaking in the macrocosm, migration is the root of just global culture, but American culture specifically migration. Immigrants hasn't built this culture.
Just put aside the moral status.
There's no one American culture.
Hold on.
So again, we get the whole, we're a nation of immigrants. It's all immigration. Immigrants built the United States of America. Make no mistake about it. Obviously, immigration is a big part of the American story. I'm not downplaying that. I'm not dismissing that. But you guys need to understand that this country was, in fact, settled before people immigrated to it. People founded this nation on the system of beliefs that we have. They are enshrined in our Constitution, and that is what is the foundation to which immigrants were drawn to after the fact. So it did exist before immigrants, and for those of you who are like, oh, well, but the natives were here, and the settlers, that's just another word for immigrant. No, it isn't. They did not have a nation. They were not the United States of America. These are completely separate entities. Again, the fact that there were people here doesn't change the fact that a nation was founded here by different people.
there is a tremendous problem. We spoke about this in the last prompt. In the Middle East when it comes to pedophilia, a really, really big problem. There are very loose or simply non-existent laws when it comes to child marriage. The rates of rape and sexual assault in predominantly Muslim Middle Eastern countries are far higher than any Western country. We had in the United States in the last 10 years, it stopped under Donald Trump, but who knows what it will be in the future. We had in the last 10, 15 years, massive rates of migrants coming from Middle Eastern countries into the United States. I'm just asking a hypothetical or theoretical. If you're an immigrations officer and you have an individual from Iraq and he's coming from that culture and he tells you, during his swearing in or whatever, if I find the right 9-year-old, I will get married with her, I will impregnate her as soon as she's ready. That's their culture. And, migration is just a history of humanity. It's just what we do. Would you find that in any ways objectionable, number one? And number two, would you reject his application to come to the United States?
Personally, I find it objectionable, but I wouldn't reject the application based on that because I wouldn't reject the application just based on that because legally that wouldn't be able to happen.
So as you can see right there, this guy, who by the way has been sharing this clip on social media on his own personal account, which will also be linked in the description of this video, is making his case quite clearly. He is defining what he's talking about, what the issue is at hand. He's obviously talking about Middle Eastern Islamic cultures and their views on child marriage, which by the way are informed by the Islamic religion based on one of Muhammad's wives, the one that he married was 6 and then he consummated when it was 9. Again, gross, disgusting. We all understand that. So the setup for this question, again, is foundationally solid, and he's asking it in terms of a hypothetical to this particular woman, and this is where the chaos ensues. And for the next 5 minutes, the death of sanity that is going on in this particular Jubilee video is astonishing. And I don't know if they edited this down. I don't know if somebody considered editing this out, but holy crap, this is embarrassing.
Personally, I find it objectionable, but I wouldn't reject the application based on that because I wouldn't reject the application just based on that because legally that wouldn't be able to happen.
So I love this guy right here who's sitting on the opposite side of this particular woman, absolutely baffled by the depths of her leftism because he's like, are you serious? And then he looks away like he needs an adult or somebody, like he needs to call the police because this woman is in fact a danger. And yeah, that is a normal, rational response to somebody saying that if they were in a position to admit or deny people entry to the United States of America, a desire and a promise to marry a 9-year-old or impregnate a 9-year-old would not be disqualifying. This is madness right here. And it's not like after getting a little bit of pushback, she ends up saying, oh, I misspoke, I made a mistake, I spoke in error. No, she doubles down on it with horrible reasoning. And in addition to that, she does the America bad thing.
Personally, I find it objectionable, but I wouldn't reject the application based on that because I wouldn't reject the application just based on that because legally that wouldn't be able to happen. And
so I just want to understand.
We have anti-child marriage laws across the U.S., so that wouldn't happen.
So,
and some places in the U.S., the marriage laws are pretty young, and those are,
So it's insane for somebody to say, I personally disagree with something, I personally find it reprehensible, but I wouldn't deny somebody admission based on that because my judgment can never be actually used to judge anything because, again, we have a judgment-free culture. And remember, what I always want to tell you guys is that the people who don't want you to judge, they don't want you to pass judgment, don't actually want you to even have the capacity to judge or pass judgment on things. And this is a perfect example of that boiling down into a human being right before our very eyes. But of course, we also get the America bad thing because there's some wonky niche marriage laws in certain states of the union that allow minors to marry, and those are ridiculous and people are pushing to actually repeal them and whatnot. But again, those are holdovers from older times in the United States of America's history that again are nowhere near the age of 9, the example that we're talking about, and again, the religious motivation behind it. And yet, this woman is defending it. It kind of reminds me of the UK putting out that little paper where they said that, oh, cousin marriage is actually good. We're not going to advise against it because it can help bond families closer together. And it's like, yeah, I guess that is technically true. It can make families closer together when their tree ends up becoming a web that eats itself.
By the way, you think you don't know anyone who, in America, you were joking around that 1 in 10, etc. My grandparents are first cousins.
Really?
Yeah. might explain a lot.
And, then eventually causes all the problems that you tend to see among inbred populations. But again, that is put forward by the UK government because they are bending the knee to Islam, much for the same reasons that this woman is doing so as well.
Yeah. So I just want to understand. I just want to understand your position. I'm not going to. I just want to understand it. So if I tell you definitively, like I am going to find a 9-year-old because in my culture it's what we do. It's totally normal. I'll even invite you to the wedding. I'm going to find this 9-year-old and I will impregnate her. You're telling me it's illegal? Okay, so arrest me. I'm going to do it anyway. You're saying that you would still hang on. You're saying that just based on what I tell you alone, that would not be grounds for rejecting my application. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is what I'm saying.
Okay.
So there are actually two things going on in this particular clip. By the way, this is the one that I opened the video with, and both of those things are quite impressive in my humble opinion. So first and foremost, you have this woman rejecting the hypothetical because the low IQ people tend to struggle with hypotheticals, and she's saying you wouldn't be able to do that because child marriage is ABCD illegal in the United States of America, and therefore it's no big deal, nothing to worry about. But also, she's agreeing to the point by the end of it because she's like, oh, well, yeah, I'm not going to reject you on that, but I have the caveat that you wouldn't be able to do that because no state in the union would recognize this marriage, as if there's no such thing as goofy religious ceremonies that honestly predate the institution of civil marriage. So maybe they're actually closer to what true marriage actually is that are practiced within these communities. Again, sometimes you have like polygamy going on in Mormon communities. I'm using Mormons because if we talk about Islam and Muslims, people will get really angry and they'll say, oh my God, not all Muslims, which by the way, that's 100% coming in this conversation. She is going to do the not all thing, or not most, which is ridiculous and not what we're talking about. But yeah, this is the embarrassing level of, again, ethical relativism that these people operate under and how they will accept anything, no matter how disgusting of a behavior from Muslim individuals. The same thing that is causing her to say this is what causes people after an Islamic terror attack to talk about Islamophobia rather than Islamic terrorism.
There's one thing about saying like this person coming from a certain culture, and I'm not even going to necessarily agree that that is like a cultural phenomenon, but for the sake of this argument, this person saying that this is what they're going to do versus what they actually will be able to do are two different things. So I'm not going to deny an application based on someone's ideology and what they desire to do versus what they actually can do and the constraints around what they can do.
So of course we have more disagreements with the premise right here. She's like, you're throwing too much shade at the Muzzies. The Muzzies didn't do nothing. Innocent Baba Angel Aladdins. How dare you actually comment on a phenomenon that is quite common in Islamic Arabic countries. By the way, this guy's being pretty specific about what he's talking about. He could be even more specific if he were so inclined. But yeah, this lady's like, I'm rejecting all of that. I'm going to shut all that out. But also, in addition to that, there's a difference between what you say and intend you're going to do and whether or not you're going to pull it off. It's like how attempted murder is not really a crime because you didn't actually murder people, I guess, according to this woman.
If I said I'm going to blow up a building full of Catholics, you would still accept my application because he's probably not going to do it.
No, I wouldn't say that.
But you just said you would accept the 9-year-old.
But I would say that's different.
How's it
Those
different?
are two different realms.
How? They're both crimes.
So just when you thought you had a low IQ score for this particular woman, it just got 3 notches lower as she didn't even understand how to logically follow the premise that she was putting forward when given an alternative example. Again, asinine, ridiculous.
But that's advocating or saying that I'm going to do this particularly violent thing. And I'm not saying it's
Both
violent.
examples are.
But it's part of my culture.
Both examples are.
But there's something different between marriage customs is different than killing
No,
people.
it is not.
And that
Marrying
those
a
are two
9-year-old is
different...
abhorrently wrong and evil. It is extremely detrimental to children, to their psychology,
I
to their
agree. I
physiology.
agree with that.
So just,
but what I'm saying
it's
but you're assuming that this is a culture and that culture is coming here.
So the star of the show is the original guy who brought up the hypothetical, but this individual right here, the guy who's getting morally outraged, is definitely up for best supporting character in this particular Jubilee video, and you could see the visible frustration on his face as he realizes the absolute psychopathic nature of the leftists that he's sitting next to. In fact, this frame, absolutely wonderful, because you have the woman holding out her hands like this as she's trying to express her point, and then this guy's just face-palming. He's quite literally face-palming in this particular Jubilee video, because what this woman is saying is, again, madness. And again, there are no circumstances outside of specifically Islam and Islamic traditions where people would bend over backwards to make these ridiculous ridiculous arguments. Again, imagine you came to this country and you were facing the immigration officer and you could not lie. And they asked you a couple of questions and all of a sudden you're expressing to this immigration officer that you're actually a serial killer or an aspiring serial killer. And you want to be a little bit traditional in that you're mostly going to kill hookers in the United States of America, but your goal is to definitely get to at least 30 bodies so that way they could make movies about you and Netflix specials about how attractive you are, because, you know, that's basically what they're doing. There is no way that this woman would say, well, being a serial killer is illegal. With forensic technology, it would actually be much easier to catch you before you killed 30 people. Come on in and enjoy the country, because I don't think you're actually going to be able to pull this off. But again, here, when it comes to the muzzies, all of a sudden, all bets are off, and that's probably because Islam bans gambling, and you should just be welcomed right in to express the distinctions in your culture.
Because you're assuming that this is a cultural phenomenon, and I don't think
It
it is.
absolutely is.
And
Absolutely is. You know, he's right. He is.
and I think that there's more to someone's application for citizenship
Well, hold on.
here.
So you're saying pedophilia
Yeah,
would
there
not
is-
be enough. Pedophilia would not be enough to reject someone's visa application.
I think that is definitely.
Again, every sentence from this woman makes it worse. There is nothing redeeming at all whatsoever about what she's bringing up. And like I said, this would not be applicable logic to the serial killer example where she's like, oh, well, you know, that's just one thing on your application. The fact that you're going to try to kill as many hookers as possible in a ritualistic way, that's not everything about you as a whole, as a person. But when it comes to Islam,
Because you're assuming that this is a cultural phenomenon.
and I want to make this clear, she's not actually just broadly excusing harming children and all these sorts of horrible abuses against children. She's only excusing it when it's at the hands of Muslims, because that is what her wokeified brain is telling her to do. And again, we will see another example in just a little bit where all of a sudden everything is different.
Because I think the premise of how you're coming at this is in bad faith. Like, you're saying that that Muslim majority countries, that there is a problem with pedophilia, and people who are coming from these Muslim majority countries are going to come here and bring that here.
That's not what he's saying.
You see what I mean right there? She's battling against the premise. And by the way, the premise is the real observable world and the traditions that happen to be common in the Arabic world. Maybe Iraq wasn't the bestest example of that, because Iraqis are actually kind of chill when they get to the United States of America. We've had more problems with people from other countries, just being 100% real, but it makes no matter. She's rejecting everything as a whole, because how dare you denigrate Islam? Islam is the greatest thing ever. And again, this is a part of that anti-Western ideology. It doesn't matter if all of her other beliefs would be completely undermined in an Islamic society. What matters is that your beliefs in a Western society are to be undermined as a goal.
But
So you know what? I'm coming from a Catholic
distinguished.
country. How about that? I'm coming from the Vatican City. How about that? You know what? Actually, that's a good example, because the Catholic Church does have a problem with pedophilia. I'm a Catholic, and I am telling you as fact, I am messed up psychologically. My priest abused me, and I'm telling you, I'm going to find, an altar boy. I am telling you, I'm going to abuse him.
In that example of the person who's coming from a Muslim majority country and saying that that's what they're going to do here, of finding a 9-year-old and impregnate them and marrying them, what I was disagreeing with is the fact that, one, they wouldn't be able to marry them under marriage laws.
So look, there may have been a cut right there in the transition between one shot to another. In fact, there was definitely a cut, because as you could see in the shot where he finishes asking the question, the glasses are on the table, but in the shot where they cut back to the woman, the glasses are actually in his hand. Very deceptive, Jubilee. Didn't think I'd catch that, but I absolutely did. Also, you can notice the audio almost completely dips out because they didn't close the cut well enough in the editing process. Again, a little inside baseball on how these people hide things from you. But as you just heard in what was left in this Jubilee video, this woman starts talking about the things specifically she disagreed about the Muslim example, which is you wouldn't be able to legally get married, therefore it's no big deal at all whatsoever. And again, this is her making a delineation from somebody coming from a Catholic background, specifically a priest, and of course, your regular ordinary Muslim. This is crazy, guys. This is insane. This is the problem, not just with cultural relativism, but more importantly, ethical relativism, in that, it just doesn't really matter as long as their society ends up accepting it. It's no big deal in the United States. And sure, our laws will prevent it, I guess, maybe not, but come on in. Muhammad, get your ass over here. Mr. Abdullah, come on, get right behind him. Why are you all fighting age males? Ahmed, could you answer this? Just get in here. Just get in the country. Get in the country. Make my people in America look like this guy right here, and I will praise you for it and call anybody who calls you out Islamophobia. Is Islamophobic? Islamophobia.
I was disagreeing with the fact
Fine,
that your premise was that these Muslims are coming from a place where that's a culture and that's inevitably what's going to happen.
So yeah, as you can see right here, the main issue, the thing that triggered this woman is the fact that you're criticizing Islam. Never criticize the Muslims and never criticize the Arab world at all whatsoever. Always deflect, and then eventually she ends up deflecting to Jeffrey Epstein because, oh my god, the Jeffrey Epstein affair, even though again, the majority of people are against Jeffrey Epstein, the fact that he got that sweetheart deal in Florida is something that enrages the population. And by the way, there were plenty of Muslims in the Epstein files, if you guys are not aware of that, based on the coverage that you might be hearing about, but also you wouldn't need to have a guy like this in your country if your country wasn't already against it, if it wasn't something that you had to cover up. Again, on social media, you could find videos, I'm not going to show it to you for obvious reasons, of 9-year-old girls on their wedding day with older men. It's gross, it's disgusting, it is depraved, and yes, I am saying that not only as an American, but as somebody who has no problem looking down on worse cultures and worse cultural practices that are not different, that are not, oh, to each his own, they are just worse. Like, ours better, theirs worse, if you need that explained in the most simplest terms. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. As per usual, if you like this video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on the social media, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about the absolute craziness that was going on this Jubilee panel. Till next time.